On Substack, you have 29,000 subscribers. Putting the traditional growth tips aside, like being consistent, collaborating with others, what for you is a key factor in growing such a large and loyal audience?
None of that really catches and sticks unless you have a personal brand built around yourself as a writer.
What's the first step you would recommend someone to take if they're looking to turn their knowledge into, let's say, a digital product or an income stream?
I think when you're starting out, the most important thing to do in terms of making money is understanding what your audience.
So for today's episode, I'm joined by David McIlroy, who's an online writer, podcaster, and solopreneur, helping writers turn their words into income. David, great to have you on the podcast here.
It's good to be here, Yari. Thanks for having me along.
So, David, your newsletter on Substack is called How to Write for a Living. Let's talk about exactly that, how to write for a living. And specifically, take us a bit through your process of getting started with writing online, then first monetizing it, and now being able to actually live from it, from writing online.
Yeah, so I joined Medium back in 2023. That was kind of my first sort of foray into writing online. I had been running my own sort of marketing business for a few years before that point, like online marketing for here in Northern Ireland. And then I decided to start trying to write online because I have a degree in creative writing, which had never been used before. It's been sitting in the background gathering dust. So I decided to start using it, and I heard Medium was great. And that was a good starting point, I think, for me in writing, because you were able to generate some income straight away. It wasn't huge for me, but it got me started and it helped me understand the basics of it and how to write a headline well and structure an article and that sort of thing. So that was a good start. And then I discovered Substack around the same time. I didn't use it properly for a few months, but then once I started phasing into it, that's when I started to see income being generated from my words properly. So I started to get paid subscribers, and it's quite exciting whenever you get your first paid sub and then you get a few more and you start to see it build up, and you can see how it can become an income stream very, very quickly for you. So initially I had Medium and Substack as dual income streams, and then Substack kind of eventually became the main one. And that's how I started. So yeah, it's just a matter of experimentation at the start and following on from other people who you've seen go ahead of you and following their footsteps.
That reminds me of my own journey writing online. I really got started on Medium, and it was so cool to just be able to write and directly monetize your writing without having any product of your own to sell or any offers of your own to sell. That was back in the golden days of Medium, which unfortunately now are over. But it was so cool. That really like rewired my own belief. Like, oh, you can actually create content right online and get paid for it. That's amazing. And then, of course, like making the shift to Substack, you already have to think more like an entrepreneur, because the way you get paid on Substack is either through a paid newsletter or maybe digital products or offers of your own. Did you find that shift from just writing and monetizing your writing directly to actually like building a newsletter business almost, was that an easy shift for you to make?
No, in the sense that I had to figure a lot of things out along the way, but I'm someone who really enjoys figuring out systems and discovering how things work and that sort of thing. So the process wasn't easy, but it was enjoyable for me because I'm a nerd about that kind of stuff. So it was good fun. But kind of once you get the basics of it, Substack's very easy, I think, to manage and to grow and build on in terms of your audience. So if you're not used to that sort of thing, if you're not used to thinking about your writing in an entrepreneurial way, it can be difficult, especially at the start. But once you get used to it, it kind of rolls comfortably on its own then in the background.
So many of our listeners, they might have expertise, right? So particular skills or knowledge that they are really good at, they really know a lot about, and they want to start a creator business, right? They know a lot about their own topic, but then monetizing it, thinking like a marketer, thinking like an entrepreneur, that can be a bit difficult. What's the first step you would recommend someone to take if they're looking to turn their knowledge into, let's say, a digital product or an income stream?
Yeah, first of all, you're right. It is definitely something that is not easy for people when they're starting out, because you have to think about multiple things at once. You're not just a writer, you're also a marketer and a business person and all that sort of stuff. You're wearing many caps. But I think when you're starting out, the most important thing to do in terms of making money is understanding what your audience are struggling with. So you could make the most amazing course or have the most amazing coaching program or write the most amazing article. But if it's not solving a problem that your audience actually are dealing with, it's not going to do anything for you. And it might get read. People might look at it if it's a course, but they're not actually going to click the purchase button unless it's going to solve a problem they're struggling with. So the first and foremost thing you need to do is understand what are your audience's main core struggles and pain points, and then build something that addresses those. And the best way to understand those pain points is to just ask your audience and look for correlations. Look for questions that come up time and again in chats or in the comment section or things like that. And then create a digital product or a course, or write an article that paid subscribers can read that addresses that. And that's the simplest and best way to actually generate money from your writing.
That's really important to listen to your audience and really see what pain points do they have, what are they struggling with, and then basically build a solution to that in a course or coaching offer. And I really learned this lesson the hard way. Back when I had my productivity newsletter, I was excited about morning routines myself. I was really into morning routines for a certain period of my life, and I thought, let's create a course on this. My audience probably wants it because I'm excited about it. Spent weeks building the course, launching it, being all excited about it, and then basically crickets. I only made like a few sales. And I really learned the hard way that, like, wait, I did not ask my audience if they actually wanted to learn more about morning routines, specifically if it was a pain point for them or challenge for them, if they would want to invest in an offer that would help them with it. I skipped all of that, right? So comparing that to my best selling offer, that's when I really sat down, surveyed my audience, really identified their pain points, which was procrastination, and then build a course around that. So I think that's really important advice. If you think about monetizing your skills or a certain expertise, really look at, okay, what am I good at? But at the same time, what do people want and what do they want to pay for? So you mentioned gathering that data, right? Surveying your audience. Is that something you do like regularly? Is that something you're automatically doing? You're scanning the comments, scanning what your audience is saying to gather this information, or do you have certain systems for it?
Bit of a combination of both. I do have systems built in, so there's different points in the like touch points where my audience will connect with me, where they'll be offered the chance to take a poll or a survey. I'll put out a poll every week in my weekly roundup on Saturdays, and just be a simple question, and I'll try and gather some data from that. But there's also surveys at the end of some of the courses and like free resources that I offer as well. And I think there's also a survey on my welcome email on Substack too. So there's different touch points where people can actively give me data that I can draw from and sort of extrapolate information. But I also just look for those kind of questions occurring as well. And you do kind of, when you hear the same question 4 or 5 or 6 times, you do start to realize, actually, this is a problem people are struggling with. And I've answered the same question multiple times in chat and things like that. And maybe it'd be better turn this into a course or an article. And I've been through the same thing as you, Yari, where I've created a course in the past that has done absolutely nothing because I thought it was a good idea. It's something that I thought people would need. And then whenever I created it and spent hours and hours creating it, it was just absolutely crickets as well. So yeah, you have to understand what your audience need, and don't make anything unless you've validated the idea multiple times and you're sure that it's something people actually want. Unless it's a very, very easy, simple, small resource you can create, maybe with something you've already made. You can just kind of throw it together and that's fine. That can be like a little impulse buy. But if it's something you're going to spend a lot of time on, then make sure that it's something your audience actually need.
Is the writing challenge you created, I believe it's called the 1K writing challenge?
1K daily, yeah.
1K daily. Is that the result of this exact process, gathering feedback from your audience and then building the product they want?
Yeah, a little bit. It's kind of a combination of a couple of things. So, what I was doing a few months ago was sharing my daily progress when I was writing one of my novels. So I was putting up every single day, here's how many words I wrote, and I was tracking it on a Google spreadsheet and that sort of thing. And people were joining in with that process. So the sheet was public. People could add their own daily word counts to it as well, that sort of thing. People were joining in. It was good fun. And then I realized that maybe this is something that I could create as an evergreen product people could actually use, because it's helped me get my way through novels and things like that. So I just basically took the same process I was already using and turned it into this 30-day, course, where basically people will get emails from me each day, and I'll have like a little motivational video and some inspirational quotes and things like that, and encouragements to kind of help them get through those 30 days. So Yeah, that's just an example of something that I was already doing that I was able to just turn into a product.
I think that's the last sentence really interesting. Something you were already doing, and that's what you turned into a product. I do think that many of those there's big opportunity in looking what you are already doing yourself, and then asking and testing, validating if your audience wants that as well, and then you turn that into a product rather than having to completely invent it from scratch and build it
Mm.
from scratch. I really like that some people are saying like you already have a 10K or 100K digital product laying around in your Google Drive, just collecting dust, right? Things you're already doing or using, or in your case, as a very prolific writer, I believe all the books behind you, right behind you, are yours, right? That you
They're not
publish
they're not
yourself.
they're not all mine. A couple of them are,
A couple of
but
them.
I'd love to have written that many by this point. Yeah, it'd be incredible. Maybe someday I'll have a shelf that's just all me.
If we're next time we're on the podcast in a few months, then maybe the whole shelf is filled with your books.
Maybe. At least one more anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, David, let's shift it up a little bit. On Substack, you have 29,000 subscribers, I believe, at this point, which is a very large audience. But putting the traditional growth tips aside, like being consistent, collaborating with others, all very important. But what for you is really like a key factor in growing such a large and loyal audience? Because people really seem to love you and love your work as well.
Some of them do. Some of them don't. No, I think yeah, things like being consistent and collaborating are really important. But I think none of that really catches and sticks unless you have a personal brand built around yourself as a writer. I've realized this gradually over time that what people connect with most is you as a person, not your offers, not your publication, not even your writing, but you as an actual human being is what they want to connect with. Because we're in a world now where very, very soon most of what's online is going to be dominated with artificial intelligence. We're going to be communicating with people who we think are people, but are actually bots and things like that. And that's just going to be the norm very, very soon. So if we want to stand out in the midst of all that, we need to be our true, authentic selves and be able to convey things that AI can't convey online about yourself, about the things you're going through, the struggles, the things you like and don't like. I shared a post yesterday, which I know you saw, about there being a giant moth in our house. Because I'm terrified of moths. I have this real weird phobia of moths for some reason. And I don't think AI would generate that kind of post out of thin air. Maybe it will someday, but it's little things like that that you can kind of convey about yourself. Someone might further down the line be like, "Oh yeah, David McIlroy is that guy who wears caps and he has glasses and he's a bit of a nerd and he's scared of moths because I saw a post about him one time." Anything you can do to create those touch points with your audience to basically just break down the barriers between um, them not trusting you and them liking you and trusting you and wanting to support you financially through buying your stuff is really, really important. So having out your own personal writing brand is super key, I think, going forward for building audience trust.
Yeah, because when I look at your content, I really get the feeling like, and of course we've been on many talks and masterminds, but even if that wasn't the case, looking at your content, I would really have the feeling like I would know you personally. Like you share travel pictures, you share some of the music you like, some of the movies you like, and you're very like open about it. And the fun thing is, it doesn't even like some of the things you share, some of the movies, some of the music, I don't even know about it. But the fact that you share it makes me feel like I know you and now I like you and I trust you and I'm way more willing to buy from you. Right? Those factors, know, like, and trusting someone, that leads to people buying your course, your program, maybe signing up for your paid newsletter. Not necessarily because you are the best creator or the biggest creator, but because people can resonate with you most. I'm not talking about you specifically, David, but just in general, right? If you're not the biggest creator, not the best creator, but you share a lot about yourself, then people will naturally gravitate towards you because they feel like they know you and they
Mm,
like you and they trust you. And that's really a way to stand out.
mm.
So was that something like building your personal brand? Is that something you done very intentionally, or is it kind of like something that evolved over time?
Again, a bit of both. I think initially it was not intentional because I've for years have just shared a lot about myself on things like Twitter and stuff like that. I just was one of those people who posted everything that came into their head about stuff that they liked, if it was about football or movies or music or whatever. But I realized over time that Um, if you don't post about certain topics consistently, if you kind of bounce around between different things, it's very, very hard for your audience to track those facts about you. You might mention the football team you support once, and then you don't mention it again for like 6 months or something like that. And some of your audience will get that and will hear that about you, and most of them won't. But if you mention it multiple times repeatedly and kind of keep hammering that fact home, eventually they'll get that you support Liverpool or that you support the Kansas City Chiefs, the cap I'm wearing right now from you guys, um, and that sort of thing. So I think for me, it was not intentional at the start. And then I realized that actually, if I want people to have those touch points, I need to mention those things repeatedly and wear caps in every video that I'm in and mention things that I like and consistently post about the movies that I see. All of it is not necessarily relevant directly to my publication and that sort of thing, but it is relevant in building the brand around myself. I know there's other writers and creators that I like online that I've been following for years, and there's a lot about them I don't know about their process and things like that. But I could tell you off the top of my head a few facts about them straight away, just about them as people, because they talk about it a lot. And again, that familiarity breeds trust, and that trust breeds income further on the line.
You said it well that the things you share about yourself don't have to be related to your business or your publication or your newsletter at all. It's purely sharing it about yourself, and that's how people really get to know you better. And I found that personally, I really struggle with that, especially in my first years creating online, where it was only long form writing on Medium. And I found it really difficult to weave in that personal side of myself. But now with Substack, specifically with Substack Notes, right, you can just share a picture. Usually I share pictures of my dog doing something funny. And it's crazy how many um, people approach me saying like, "Oh, you have a dog. I have a dog as well. What breed is he?" And first we just have a conversation of like 20 minutes about dogs. And then they end up becoming a customer, right? And it's so funny because dogs have nothing to do with our publication, but just because of sharing something personal, you get this personal connection. And I think that's so important, especially like you said, David, in an age of AI where it's only gonna AI generated content's only gonna increase. Um, but it's something I really struggled with in the beginning because I wasn't used to that. I was just used to writing, like let's call it value-based articles, and that's all I did. But now I'm really realizing, and you're one of the inspirations there for sure. Like share more about myself, whether it's a book that I'm reading or I'm traveling or my dog is doing something funny or I'm in the gym, whatever, just share it because you don't know who it will resonate with the most. And it's just fun to share a little bit more about yourself and people get to know the person behind the business or behind the newsletter. Um, so yeah, if someone is looking to do this more, what and specifically build their personal brand, what are like 3 things you would give people for advice, like starter points to help them with this?
Yeah, first and foremost, I would say don't try to force anything in terms of your brand. So don't try to create a persona around yourself, because it just won't stick. If you try to take up a hobby just for the express purpose of making it part of your personal brand, unless that's something you absolutely love, you might just stop doing it eventually, and then it kind of creates this like crack in your brand, and that can start to splinter it after a while. If you're going to take on things, you're going to associate with yourself and want people to associate with you as well. Make sure it's something you can do all the time and talk about a lot and be comfortable with. That's easily part of what you do. Like for me, the caps thing, I've got a lot of caps. Like I sort of collect caps now. I must have about 20 or 30 caps just rocking about my house. And that's just going to increase more over time as well as people keep buying them for me, which is great. But that's something that was easy for me because I wear caps literally all the time, except when I'm just in the house on my own. That's easy to incorporate into my personal brand in the same way talking about movies because I go to see movies a lot and I love movies and games and music and whatever else, and dogs as well, which is a thing we both share. So first of all, keep it something that you can do comfortably that's not forced into your brand. Secondly, make sure it's something that you can talk about extensively because it might be something you're interested in, but unless you are really, really into it and could stand on a soapbox and talk about it for half an hour without drawing breath, it's going to be something you're going to struggle to incorporate into the stories that you maybe share online. So I'll share a lot of stories about certain things, and I can talk about that stuff till I'm blue in the face because I'm really interested in it. But if I try to talk about something else, I'd have to research it loads for ages, and I'm not really big on research and stuff. I want to just kind of tell stories about things I've experienced and then tie those stories into actionable, teachable points in value-based articles. Sounds really boring to say it that way, but that is the best way to do it. So make sure that you can talk about stuff passionately and extensively as well. And thirdly, I guess just make sure it's something you can see yourself doing for the next 5 to 10 years as well. So if you're going to tie it into your personal brand, make sure it's something that's not going to actively change. So, if you're going to be talking about living in a city and you're going out and about sharing pictures of living in a city, but then you move out to like the countryside and but you become known as someone who spends a lot of time in the city and stuff like that or whatever. Something like that. It's not going to be this drastic change at some point in your life further down the line. Make sure that it can tie into your brand and you can stick with it for at least a decade or more. I think anyway, those are probably things I would say anyway for that. Yeah.
I really like what you said about not creating a persona.
Mm.
Because creating a persona that can be really difficult to maintain, almost impossible to maintain. I think it's rather about highlighting the things you're already doing and enjoying, and just putting that more to the forefront in terms of the content you create.
Mm.
And I think it also at the same time is a balance, right? I don't know how you approach this, but how much do you share that's like really personal content that has nothing to do with your newsletter, for example, or your business, versus actual like business content? What's a bit of the ratio there, if you have any?
I would say, for instance, if I was going to share three notes in a day, for instance, at least one of those notes would be a personal thing. So it'd be like a photo or a video or something that I'm doing. And at least one of them would be like a business more related kind of thing. And the other one could be another bit of both maybe. I think it has to be kind of a 50-50 balance overall, where if you just talk about yourself all the time, then it becomes more like a Dear Diary kind of situation or a blog that doesn't really affect anything else. It doesn't really tie into what you do. If you only talk about the value side of things and about business, then it's very hard to relate to you as a person. And if people can't relate to you as a person, they're not going to trust you. So you have to try and find that balance. And it's also about trying to not have these big swings, so like a real tenuous link. So you talk about going to the beach for a walk, and then you're like three things I learned about business from my walk on the beach, which you can do, but that's like a real LinkedIn kind of thing, which I'm not a huge fan of, where there's this real separation between the story and then the actual teaching points. It's better to talk about maybe here's something I struggled with in the past in business, and here's a story around it about me as a person, and then it's a shorter step to then providing a teaching point for your audience. So have a balance with it. I know there's other writers who are very, very good at this, where they'll talk a lot about the business side of things that they struggle with in the past, and then tie that directly to their current self and what they've learned in that time.
Because I was going to say, I think that's also another way to approach it, right? On the one hand, you have your complete personal things, and people get to learn more about you as an individual. On the other hand, just when it comes to creating content, try to weave in personal stories and personal lessons rather than how to content. I always say, like, strive to be a guide and not a guru, right? If you try to be a guru, it's you're preaching to people this is how you should do things or how to do things. But being a guide is actually like how I did this or how I didn't do this, how I failed with it, right? But just like sharing it from your own personal perspective and telling more personal stories. I remember one of my best performing Medium articles was how I conquered procrastination using neuroscience instead of how to conquer procrastination using neuroscience. It's pretty much the same article. I just wrote it from the perspective of what worked well for me and what didn't work well for me. And that article went super viral. And that's when I learned, like, I need to write more from my own perspective. And I think that's also building a personal brand, right? Where it's like, the main topic that you teach, for example, how can you teach that from a perspective of your own experience and your own lessons and your own failures even? Is that
Mm.
something you find yourself doing as well, spending a lot of intention in?
Yeah, more and more, because I'm always actively doing things in a business sense. Like I never really stop. So on a daily basis, I'm learning something new. And I've heard people say that you don't need to be super far ahead of your audience to look back and tell them or advise them how to do things. You can literally just tell them what you did this week to the person who's like a week behind you, essentially, something new that you've learned, because it's going to be new information for them as well, potentially. And that's enough. It doesn't have to be this big groundbreaking, here's like my 10-year journey to get to this point. It can literally just be, I figured out how to do this thing. Here's how I did it. It might be useful for you as well. So yeah, just take your personal stuff that you're going through that you've learned and just tell people how to do it as well. Simple as that.
If I look at your products, I think that's something you're doing well. Your 1K daily writing challenge, that's literally a process you have been using yourself. Your podcasting on Substack course, like you started, I think as one of the first people, maybe a podcast on Substack, doing that for a while, and then created the course, literally sharing what you have done, right, and what you've learned from it. So it's all from that perspective of what you have learned and what you have to teach, rather than a how-to. So I think that's something you're already doing really well.
Yeah.
Do you have any new offers in mind? Anything new you're currently building?
Well, I'm building something right now, which is basically a follow up to one of the free resources that I offer, which is called Substack Launchpad, which is just a little 7-day free email course that people can get whenever they subscribe, and it just helps walk them through the basics of Substack. And then I'm building a sort of paid version of that, which is a follow up, which teaches people how to monetize their Substack. So if they've set up Substack first of all with the free course, then they can then monetize it with this other course. And the second course will be available to my paid subscribers only, so it is part of my paid tier. And I'm sort of building that this month. And then a bigger thing that I've got in the works is something called Writer Brand Lab, which is my coaching, like group cohort coaching system, which is going to be like a small group. What it sounds like, helping people develop their writer brands, is what we're talking about today, obviously. And that's just working with a small group of maybe 6 to 10 people over the course of a few months to help them go from not having a brand at all or not understanding what their brand is to having a strong core writer brand that can then generate income for them, that can build trust and grow their audience and generate income. So that's an exciting thing they've got coming out very, very soon. So anyone who's following me can keep an eye on my Substack and my email list and find out more about that.
David, one last question. What's one piece of advice you would give to someone who's currently maybe sitting a bit on the sidelines with this whole creator economy, but they're very interested in getting started, right? Getting started with writing online. Maybe they've dabbled with it, published their first post, but they really need to get started. They want to get started. What's one piece of advice you would give them?
I would say try to get into a rhythm that's manageable, first of all. So start off by, if say you have a family and you're busy and your writing's very much like a part-time thing or like a side hustle or whatever at the start, don't try and go like all in on it and be posting like every single day, like writing flat out, trying to spend loads and loads of time on it, because you just burn out in no time at all. It's better to just start off small. So can you write one article a week? Then can you maybe write 2 articles a week? Can you post 1 note a day? Can you post 3 notes a day? Work your way up from a simple rhythm, but keep the rhythm in place right from the start. So don't sort of post 5 articles one week and then no articles the next week and then 3 articles a week after that. Try and have a simple, manageable, sustainable rhythm right from the beginning, because that's the thing that will really grow your audience over time, will build your brand. If you can stick with something for a long period of time and grow it gradually, rather than going all in and burn yourself out in no time. Which so many writers do. They go all in a Substack publication. I'm all in a Substack and doing everything here now, and then within like a month they've given up on it because they didn't see the results they expected to get. Understand it's going to take maybe a few months or a few years even before you see real incredible results on platforms, and be willing to take that time and start with a simple rhythm.
David, thank you so much for being on the podcast today, sharing your lessons with us. I'm sure we will be seeing you more in the next few months here on this podcast. At least I hope so. Where should people go to if they want to learn more from you, David?
Just follow me on Substack. So if you're on Substack already, just look me up, and that's basically where I am. I'll be on other social media platforms too, but Substack is my main sort of creative hub. So definitely subscribe and check out what I'm up to.
We'll link to your publication, your Substack publication, in the show notes for everyone who wants to check out more about David and his work. you can just click the link there. And once again, I highly recommend it. Anything David publishes is valuable in my eyes. So I want to thank you all for tuning in to today's episode of the Write Build Scale podcast. And if you enjoyed this podcast episode with David, please share it with one person who you also think will find this episode valuable. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That would really help us out a lot, especially in the early days of this podcast. With that being said, see you all on the next episode.